Oops. Okay. Got off to a great start here. I just yanked my headphones out. Welcome everybody. I'm still saying off air on this side. Will that? Should I wait till it says live? There it is. Okay. Welcome everybody to our continuing conversations on Character Day 2016. We are, as you probably already know, having a series of conversations with luminaries in the world of character and a lot of the new sort of ways of thinking about working with our children and adults and shaping who we are to become. And we're very grateful to have with us today Janell. And Janell, can you tell us, whoa, sorry. Hold on just 1 second, sorry.
Sure.
Everything just locked up for a second. Janell Burley Hofmann, who is the founder of iRules Academy and the Slow Tech Movement, and she wrote a book called iRules: What Every Tech Healthy Family Needs to Know About Selfies, Sexting, Gaming, and Growing Up. So just a little bit of stuff in your book. Sounds like the subject is you're just taking a little sliver of like the entire universe of what everybody has to confront today.
Yes.
Tell me about the writing of that book. How did you get started on that? I imagine you're a mother as well. I'm guessing this didn't come from some abstraction.
Absolutely. So I'm a mother of 5 children who are currently ages 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16. So when I say that I get it in terms of parenting the digital generation, I absolutely do. I have 2 sons are older and then 3 daughters. And prior to writing the book, I was doing a lot of work with youth and families through parenting workshops, parent education, grant-funded programming on a variety of topics. But what I was seeing with the youth and families that I was working with was this constant need to talk about the technology, and it just, every conversation looped back to, how do we coexist? What is balance? What is healthy? And of course, then I was seeing it in my own life. And so when my oldest, who's now 16, almost 17, was 13, my husband and I decided to get him his very own smartphone. But with it came a set of rules. We called it the iPhone contract, and it's been since formed into iRules, right? A working set of iRules, which had 18 points outlining our expectations for how we wanted him to use his new device. And in reality, it wasn't just a set it and forget it, here's a list of rules, but really the connection to today was it was really about what kind of character traits do we want to see him bring from what we've taught him away from the screens, and what do we want to see him bring to the screen and to this device. And so it was really an opportunity for us to pause and reflect on what we wanted from the technology and how we wanted it in our lives. And so the contract I shared on my blog on the Huffington Post and on my own website, and it went absolutely viral back in 2012, 2013, and it engaged a lot of people all over the world, which was absolutely shocking to me, because I thought this was just a conversation we were having around our kitchen table and maybe some of the families we knew, but really all of us, adults, young people, all demographics, ages, genders, were really faced with this issue about how excited we were about the technology, but we were cautious. And so the book is really based on that principle of, how do we have some of these hard conversations, and how do we bring our best self, our best character traits to the screens?
Now, it's interesting because we had a conversation earlier with a guy named Chris Liu, who's working with Hack, an organization called Hack Harassment. And they, we talked a lot about the sort of overlap between who we are online and who we are in person, and how these character traits, there's been a kind of divide between those two places. And it sounds like you're in some ways anticipating that in how you dealt with giving him his smartphone. Can you talk a little bit more about, as a parent raising a kid, how you want them to be consistent or be, you know him as, I'm sure, a kind, great kid, but sometimes online can bring things out of people that are surprising. How do you use the iRules in the way that you're talking to him about technology and his phone in a way that helps him to maintain who he is, the great kid that you know?
Yeah, this is such an exciting question, and I could talk forever and ever about this, because what I see from the thousands of families and young people that I now work with, since this has really been a career shift for me and work internationally, is when technology works the best and has the most positive impact on family life, the way they use technology is a reflection of what's important to them prior to introducing the technology, right? So there's this foundational component that we're building character all along, that we know what's important to us, that our tech use is rooted in our family values, or the things that are cornerstones are already important to us. And so when those things are in place, like for example, responsibility, right? That we want to take care of the things that we own. We want to take care of, you know, our bedrooms, our homework. We want to be on time. We want to say please and thank you, right? We want all these things for ourselves and for the young people in our lives. So we want to infuse that same methodology that we would to the screens. Just because it's a screen doesn't mean we don't have to teach it, doesn't mean we're not going to model it. It doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it and make some mistakes. So really, I think for families, knowing what they stand for, knowing what feels important to them, and then taking that and bringing it to the screens and letting it be alive, letting it be part of the conversation. You know, what kind of social tech user do you want to be, right? We don't expect our kids to be unkind in the classroom or on the playground, we certainly don't want them, or we don't want it to be okay just because there's a screen there as a barrier to reading nonverbal communication or reading tone of voice. And so we're really trying to educate and bring the whole person to the screen.
Is this a little bit of what is this sort of informing your idea of slow tech? Is that sort of the description of slow tech, and that we're bringing our whole person to the screen?
Yeah, so slow tech doesn't mean no tech, right? Because I think it's really fun when families and school districts and organizations can fall in love with the internet, because there's so many great and positive things that it can bring to our lives, and it can really enhance our lives. So the slow tech just means thoughtful, deliberate mindfulness, really digital mindfulness, how we want to use the technology. So a family with young children is thinking about this in ways of, you know, how can we layer the technology? We don't want to just hand over an iPad to a 7-year-old and say you can have any app you want, unlimited time on it, and say, you know, I hope you make good choices and I hope you're appropriate, right? That's not setting up a young child for success, but maybe vetting 2 or 3 apps that we think might be fun for them, or might be appropriate, or might be interesting to them, and engaging that with them. And then same as they say, hit middle school, that we're thinking about what's a good starting place for texting. You know, when you and I went home from school, we didn't bring our 300 classmates home with us every night. You know, that's a lot of pressure, and that's a lot of responsibility to be that connected all the time. And there's an opportunity to spend a lot of time with people that we maybe wouldn't hang out with in person, or we wouldn't pick up the phone and call. And so that influences us, and that impacts our emotional and social well-being. So we want to be thinking about that as parents, and slowing down that process, and remembering that it actually can be a process. It doesn't have to be a hand it over and it's automatic and we relinquish all kind of teaching about it, and we kind of wave the white flag and say, oh, sorry, it's generation tech and there's nothing we can do about it. That slow component reminds us that we have lots of choices in how we want to use the technology, and we can really put some thought into it all along the way, setting our kids up, you know, for success and a healthy relationship to the internet and all the, you know, the great and positive things that it can do.
But one of the things I've noticed with my own kids, you know, I mean, they're still pretty young, so their connection to technology is somewhat limited, but they, you know, there's a kind of like a gaze fascination that happens no matter what's on the screen, like whether it's a photograph I accidentally took of my foot or whatever it is that they have a hard time breaking free of. And I wonder if some of what you're talking about, like this intentionality, if there's some kind of brain science involved almost that allows for that to be less of a trap, that you know, not only are you teaching them how to have a relationship, but the sort of physical relationship that kids sometimes have with the screens where they can't break free. Like it's disturbing to them to break free. If they feel like they're bringing the whole person to it, that they also can bring their whole person away with less disconnect or less problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that, you know, screen can be king. Once that gets rolling, you know, it's even for us, if we think about anything that we're struggling with, as, you know, the brain is fully formed, you know, ideally for us. And so if we're having a hard time exhibiting self-control, and if we're having a hard time, you know, thinking about the ways in which we live in balance, certainly asking the adolescent brain or the young child to be a great challenge. And so we want to think about that in a way that that's going to take practice, right? That we're going to have to set some boundaries or some eye rules, and then not just say, what I think families resent the most is that they equate introducing technology to struggle, right? That there's going to be meltdowns, that there's going to be a struggle, there's going to be constant negotiations. You know, recently I was doing a talk in the Boston area, and one of the women I was working with said, I feel like I wake up every day on a war against sugar and screens. And I really feel like that's totally summarized, you know, a whole lot of people feel in modern day parenting. And so what I want to offer to that is, like, let's make peace with the internet in a way that means we might have to teach our kids some self-discipline, and there will be mistakes and bumps in the road. And just like any other developmental stage, when we feel like they've made it through something and mastered, there'll be something new, right, that we always have to face. And so understanding now we're just integrating the tech into all of the other things that we're talking to our kids about, and all of the other stages we're going to have to guide them through, really. And so absolutely the screen has that component that calls to us, and it's hard to put away, so that we're there fully present for our kids when that time on the iPad is up, right? Or that we're saying, you know, this particular time of day is when you can use the iPad. And so it's part of the rhythm of family life. Because when it's erratic use, or when sometimes you can have unlimited time and sometimes you can have 5 minutes, for the very young child, that can be overwhelming and stressful, not knowing what to expect. So just like anything else, we want to set them up with healthy expectations, and then really be there to guide them and teach them as that discomfort is present when it's time to put it away, and that consistency too.
And it's interesting because in some ways, we were talking about this again with the hack harassment guy, that there is one of the things about being a teenager, and you have a teenager, is that there's a lot of experiences that make one feel powerful from your own biology. Yeah. I mean, powerless, sorry, where you feel, you know, your body's changing, your voice is changing, things are happening that you don't have control over. And, but in some ways, you know, you could see your idea, and you could talk about this idea of forming a contract about technology a little bit more, and then sort of answer my question, which is, do you feel like there's a way in which making this contract, though it seems draconian on a certain level, is actually empowering for your child, that actually their involvement in creating this contract, instead of it being confining, is in some way empowering their use of technology and their relationship to you?
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that, because I think a lot of time people hear contracts and they say, you know, that will never work, or, you know, I often heard from people when the contract first went out 4 years ago, like, that this contract wasn't going to work for another family, which is yes, it wasn't supposed to, right? It was supposed to work for my particular child at that particular point in time based on our family's needs. And so it isn't a one size fits all. And I think that's the critical piece when we think about contracting, or when we think about making agreements with people that we care about. And to be totally honest, a set of eye rules between partners, between spouses, between friends going out to dinner. Like, what's this going to look like? And more often than not, I'll be doing some sort of assembly to parents. And then afterwards, couples will come up to me and say, you know, it's not my kids, it's my spouse. Or, you know, and so we're all needing to have these conversations. So having these kind of boundaries, I think, is an opportunity to have conversation. That's what I see as the greatest feature of building a contract. In any of our relationships, even our relationship with ourselves, it's a time for reflection. It's a time for us to say to our kids, why do you like that app? Why do you want this particular account? How will you use it? Show me, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just, hey, let's come up with rules that you must follow or you can't have technology. It brings a level of engagement that maybe we wouldn't make the time for. And so again, that slow tech is in there because it's being deliberate. And absolutely to your point, this idea that when our kids give us feedback, kids are, and young people and teenagers, as much as everybody says they would think a contract is punishment, they're actually craving some boundaries around the digital world, because like we talked about, it's absolutely everywhere all the time. And there's no beginning and end to a day for them anymore. So as parents, we need to be guiding that idea. And when we hear their feedback, like, what do you think is reasonable? What do you think is fair? they actually have a lot of really good points, based on their needs. So I see it as an opportunity of coming together, and it's not a one-sided, you must follow, and that there's a right and wrong way to use technology.
Cool. Janell, with that, I'm going to actually bring in, Tiffany was busy on another interview, and I'm going to have her come in. She wanted to join in and just talk to you because, of course, I worked with her on Tech Shabbat and, on the video that she did for Future Starts Here. And so that was a seminal experience for me, and thinking about technology. And so I know she's really eager to have a few minutes at least to talk to you at the end of our conversation.
Sure.
If that's all right. And
that would be fabulous.
Great. And but as she's getting herself ready, I'm just going to ask one more question of you, which is just, and I'll let you answer this as Tiffany arrives, but just how can you create for people who are nervous about this idea of creating a contract?
Sure. How
can you introduce this with your kids in a way that feels like what you're talking about, like in a place for conversation and a place for empowerment? And with that, I'm gonna bring you while you're answering. So go ahead and.
Sure. So this is such a great question. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi,
Thanks for being here. It's so good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Happy Character Day.
Happy Character Day. Woohoo!
So it's I can feel the energy all over the web and all over the world. And I just, huge high five from across the country to you for all your passion and work.
Give it to my whole team.
Totally. High fives.
Everyone.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast just being a part of it. It's so fun. So exciting.
Well, I tell so many people about your ideas. I always talk about your iPhone contract, which was instrumental in my wrestling with the phone child issue. And then I don't know, have you talked about permission to post yet?
We didn't get there yet. No, so I'm happy to jump in and talk about that.
I was supposed to let Arnie, you were answering a question.
Okay, sure.
Arnie asked you a great question.
Okay, great. So where to begin when contracting, right? Because that can feel really overwhelming for a family at any stage. Because what I hear from a lot of people is, oh, my kid's 15, it's too late. And I really want families to take back that sense of agency around the internet. And if you haven't given technology, great, you can be really proactive. But for some of us, a lot of us, we're going to have to be a little reactive because the technology happened so suddenly to us. And so we have to rethink it. And that's our right as parents and families, is to rethink that idea.
I love that you're saying that. As a lot of people say to me when they hear that my family and I don't do screens 1 day a week, they go, oh, my kids would never do that.
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, oh, yes, they would. You're the parent.
Right.
You pay the bills and they live in your home and you are the adult in the house and you're modeling behavior. And it's like, I just feel like people are giving way too much power to this other thing, technology, when technology is an extension of us. We must reclaim the power of it.
Totally. And we can show up on it, we have choice. I think that's a critical part for young people, for adults, that we can really curate the kind of experience we want to have with the internet and the way that we're influenced by it and how much it's going to be in our lives. And I have great respect for the modern day busy family. But I think this is a place that we really want to dial into because it is critical, and it makes us reflect on a lot of different areas of family life too. When we stop and think about the technology, we start thinking about other things, right? Like what else feels important to us? What else might we need to have a conversation about? What's working and what isn't? I think the technology is a great catalyst for that conversation.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you really inspired for our family to do is the contracts, and we redo them.
Yes.
Like the contract we did 3 years ago doesn't make sense anymore. We've evolved the situation. So I found that every year we've been kind of having the meeting, and the meeting is such a great discussion. I mean, think about the contracts you do for business in your work. Like if we're making a film and we're doing a film contract, like what's the spirit of the conversation? Like you're putting all your hopes, fears, anxieties on a piece of paper, and you get to talk about them in the discussion points. So do you revisit your contract?
Totally. I mean, my son, who I wrote the contract for, was just 13, and now he's about to turn 17. Like that's a huge developmental difference for a young person. So of course, like the foundational values that are in it, those principles and those cornerstones for our family stay the same, but the actual practical usage shifts and change as he does, right? So it's guided by the same principles. And then of course with, you know, his 4 other siblings, I'm looking at their personality. I'm looking at their social relationships. I'm looking at their academic, you know, are they, how are they doing in school? Are they contributing to the family system?
Right. It's like a whole, I mean, I was just given a 1-minute warning.
No.
Wait, there's so many. You and I did a whole podcast that we're going to be releasing soon after Character Day, but we went really deep in all of this stuff. So those of you listening, you know, go to sign up for our newsletter and you'll hear this like hour deep conversation that Janell and I had. But in the last minute, tell us about P2P because I love this. Okay.
Sure. So this idea that I think is so important to developing character, empathy, awareness, mindfulness in the digital space is this concept of a practical approach to sharing content, particularly pictures. So if we think about a group of peers hanging out together, whether adults, teenagers, and they're taking pictures together and they're thinking about putting it up online, a nice step, right? A nice step back approach is saying, hey, can I get your permission to put this picture up, right? This P2P, permission to post. And this becomes an opportunity just for us to pause and say, hey, this is gonna go up online. This is gonna be shared. Let's think about that. And I think that breath is so critical because everything can be so instant and so automatic that we don't give it that reflective time and we don't give our brains time to slow down, and our heartbeat, you know, is racing often when we're about to share content. So it's a great practice for family members, for friends, and for all of us to think about, you know, why am I putting this up there? What will happen when it goes online? What kind of control will I give up? And how does everybody feel about this being shared?
I love that. If that's the last minute, that's a perfect, simple practice. Everyone listening, P2P, baby. Put the hashtag
Totally.
P2P.
Yes.
I hate it when people post photos of me and I'm like, oh my God, I look horrible. Don't post that now.
Yes. Yes, totally.
Level. But I think about it. I don't post as much. I really show my kids. I don't really post that much on Facebook anymore. But if I do, I'm like, do you like this picture? Do you feel comfortable with it? If they say no, there's no way I'm going to post it. And also, it's just it's just being mindful. And sometimes I don't want people to know I was at I always feel bad.
Yes.
If people weren't invited to something, and you know, everyone's got FOMO on the web. Don't add to it. Anyway,
totally.
On that note, I'm supposed to go. How can people find out about your amazing work?
So you can follow me on Instagram at JanellBH, on Facebook, and JanellBurleyHoffmann.com, iRules.co. You can build your own iRules contract. Look up the iPhone contract and you'll find your way to me, definitely. So.
And it's hilarious and brilliant, and so are you. Thank you, Janell.
Thank you, Tiffany, for your great work.
See you later.